Hi, this is Andrew from LaptopReviews.com, and I have here with me today the ThinkPad X1 Carbon on the left-hand side and the ThinkPad T430 on the right-hand side. So these are actually both 14-inch screen laptops, although looking at the size difference between the two, it would be hard to tell that they're actually the same screen size. Obviously, the left side we have the X1 Carbon. It's an Ultrabook, so it's much thinner and slimmer than the T430. Whereas the T430 is sort of a standard style laptop that's geared towards enterprise buyers. They just want a basic 14-inch laptop that's rugged and well built, and it's not trying to achieve thinness. So I just thought for a little bit of fun today we should compare these two, and in case you're in the market for a 14-inch laptop from Lenovo, these might both be on your list. Although granted, the price difference and the form factor are quite different, but nonetheless they are both still 14-inch laptops. So let's start out with just talking about the design some. So if I stand up here, you'll see that the keyboard layout is exactly the same on both of them. They have a 6-row chiclet style keyboard. Now the touchpads do differ. On the X1 Carbon, you have a much larger glass surface touchpad, and you also have the mouse buttons here and a track point in the middle. The T430, you'll notice you have it's much smaller size touchpad, and it's not a click pad like the X1 has, where you can just click down anywhere to register a left click. On the T430, you actually have to push these mouse buttons down here to register a left click, or you can use these Ultra Nav buttons here as well if you're just using the track point. You get the same media buttons on the top of each, so that's volume up, volume down, and then just a mute button, and then microphone off. And you can see that over here as well on the X1 Carbon. So the keyboards look pretty much the same except for the touchpads. Now the lids, if I put them down, you'll see you have the all black design on the X1 Carbon, and it sometimes takes two hands to lift the lid there. Also worth mentioning, there's no latch on the lid, whereas on the T430 you have a latch system to hold the lid down. So I'll show that. There you go. You can hear it latch down there. The X1 Carbon, meanwhile, just uses resistance from hinges to keep it down. But it's not going to open up. It's actually pretty hard to open. You have to use a couple of hands to get it back open. So here we can really see the thickness difference, though. You can see that. See, the ThinkPad Carbon is around 0.7 inches thick, whereas the T430 it's around 1.2, 1.3 inches thick. So it's encroaching upon twice as thick. It looks like a double-decker bus next to a single-decker bus here. We stand up, also another difference you can see is like the hinges on the T430 are exposed at the back here, very thick metal hinges. The hinges on the X1 Carbon are not quite as thick, and you can't see them exposed on the outside here. Of course, it's the all black look on both of them. The T430 is a little more boxy looking. You have sort of some curved corners, a little more curved off on the X1 here than what you get on the T430, where it's a little more, it's not sharp, but it's a little more cornered there than rounded off. And like I said, you see the latches for the hinge there. So overall, I mean, they're both all black, kind of squarish designs, with the X1 Carbon being a little less squarish than the T430. But from a distance of, like, say, 50 feet, you wouldn't be able to tell a whole lot of difference. It's when you get up close and see the thinness and thickness difference. And of course, the screen height, since the X1 Carbon has a much lower clearance there, it makes it look smaller and more squat than what you get with the T430. So that's kind of a looks difference as well that you get. One thing to talk about here is the build quality, and both are ThinkPad build quality, so you're going to get great build. Both are very sturdy. The ThinkPad Carbon is made of, carbon, so it's a very rigid material. The T430 has some plastic in there. Now it is ABS plastic, so it's very rigid. It's not going to flex at all. Like I can't push in even slightly there. So the finish on the X1 Carbon is rubberized on the palm rests. On the T430, it's just plastic there. On the lid, you get that rubberized finish. so it's easy to carry and it's easy to grip. You also get the lid. It's going to be also a rubberized finish there. The lid for the T430 is a magnesium alloy lid, and it's very rigid. The ThinkPad Carbon, again, it's carbon material, so carbon fiber material. So you are going to have a very rigid lid there. So overall, both are very well built and rigid. The X1 Carbon might get the nod as far as using the lightweight, rigid materials, but either way, you're going to have with the T430 or the X1 Carbon a very strong build. It's as long as you treat it right, it's going to last for a number of years. So just to compare the screens a little here, I have the X1 Carbon on the left again and the T430 on the right. Now both, as I mentioned before, have a 14-inch screen. However, the resolution that's standard on the X1 Carbon is 1600 by 900, and the resolution on the T430 that I have here and is standard is lower resolution 1366 by 768. You can upgrade to a 600 by 900 screen on the T430 as well. That's not what I have here though. So the T430 screen, it might be a little hard to tell here, is dimmer than what you get with the X1 Carbon. So, I mean, when you're looking at it in person, it almost looks kind of foggy on the T430 screen. The colors are just more vivid on the X1. Now, the viewing angles are also better, and I'm just going to push back this screen to show you that. And they're at the same angle now, but you'll notice that the X1 Carbon colors hold much more true, whereas the T430 colors quickly distort. And the same deal if you pull the screens forward. You'll get the distortion much more exaggerated on the T430 than on the X1 Carbon. So there you go. And the X1 Carbon just has a superior screen to the T430, bottom line. Even if you get the 1600 by 900 resolution screen on the T430, you have the same viewing angles and same overall average to low quality screen there. So the X1 Carbon definitely has a better screen of these two. One feature that's worth mentioning on the Carbon X1 is the fact that you get a standard backlit keyboard, so it's really easy to see the keys in a dark room. Whereas on the ThinkPad T430, you can get a backlit keyboard. I do not have that. In this case, I'm just using the ThinkLight that's above the screen. And you can see here, it doesn't do quite the same job as illuminating the keyboard. And you can see the light at the top of the screen there just shines down onto the keyboard. And the keys over in the corner, bottom right side, bottom left side, just don't catch as much light. Now we're going to take a look around at the ports you get on each of these laptops, and as you'd expect, the T430 does have more ports. It's thicker and has more room for them. Right now I've got the X1 Carbon on top, so let's just take a look at the ports on the left side here. Back here we have the power connector, and then you have USB 3.0, and this is just a little wireless on-off switch. On the T430 we have a VGA monitor out, a dual headphone microphone jack, and then we have a display port. It's actually a mini display port down here, and then a couple USB 3.0 ports below that. They rotate around to the front. There are no actual ports on the front of either. On the right hand side, with the T430 first, you get an SD card reader here. You get a 34mm express card slot here, and then another USB port right here. And then on the X1 Carbon, you have SD card slot here, dual headphone microphone, mini display port, and then USB 3.0, and both of them have the Kensington lock slot. Rotate around to the back side, the X1 has nothing, whereas on the T430 we have a vertical USB charge port, and then an Ethernet LAN connector there to connect to office internet. So overall, the T430, as you would expect, has more ports and more abilities to expand there with the express card slot that it has. Now, for the sake of hilarity, we should compare the weight of these two. Let's put the X1 Carbon on the scales first, with its impressive 2 pounds, 15.6 ounces, or around 2.99 pounds. Now let's get the ThinkPad T430 out, and it feels about twice the weight. It probably is going to be, well, not twice the weight, but it's 5 pounds, 3 ounces, so significantly heavier by over 2 pounds than the X1 Carbon. So obviously, if you have the money and you really want a portable 14-inch laptop, the X1 Carbon is better in that department. One area where the T430 does have a big advantage over the X1 Carbon is the fact that it's pretty easy to upgrade, and it also has a docking connector and removable batteries. So the battery I have here is a 9-cell. It can be easily removed. You just unclip it, pull it out, put in a new battery. You can easily access various parts of the laptop, so you get to the hard drive here, get to the memory over here, or the PCI Express slots in there. So very easy to get to. And here's the docking connector as well if you want to connect to a docking station. It's designed just like most other ThinkPads to be easily tinkered with and upgraded, and replace parts that might need fixing or just upgrading. Meanwhile, over on the X1 Carbon, you see no such doors, and there's really not much you can remove without voiding the warranty. It's sealed down, so you can't access the memory, you cannot access the, it's an SSD, cannot access that, you cannot access any of the WAN slots to upgrade anything in there. So essentially what you have here is a machine that's non-upgradable. So if you're looking at ThinkPads and you're used to having the ability to upgrade them, that is certainly one consideration to keep in mind for the X1 Carbon. Let's talk about performance a little. And now both of these can be configured with up to a Core i7 processor. However, the T430 has a regular voltage processor, while the X1 Carbon has a low voltage mobile processor from Intel. So in this case, I have an Intel Core i5 3320M 2.6 gigahertz in the T430, and in the X1 Carbon we have a Core i5 3427U that's 1.8 gigahertz. So the processor on the T430 is faster, and because it's not undervolted to save on power, you're going to get better performance. The X1 Carbon can have up to 8 gigabytes of RAM. Again, you cannot upgrade that aftermarket, so you need to get that at time of configuration. The T430 can have up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, so that's a lot of RAM you can get in there, and it is easy to upgrade it aftermarket as well. We have a standard SSD in the X1 Carbon, and as you can see, that really helps out with the hard disk score of 7.9 here. The primary hard disk on the T430, meanwhile, gets a 5.9. It's just a regular 7200 RPM spinning hard drive. You can put in either a regular SSD or mSATA SSD to get the same type of storage performance on the T430. And finally, let's just talk about the graphics. With the X1 Carbon, you just get a standard Intel HD 4000. There is no upgrade option. I have the same thing in the T430 here, but if you want to, you can upgrade to NVIDIA dedicated graphics for a small, well, not a small amount, it's in the hundreds of dollars, but if you need that performance and you need dedicated graphics, you can get it in the T430. So overall, you can configure the T430 to be more powerful than the X1 Carbon simply because it's not an ultrabook, it's got more space for components, and you get that regular voltage processor. However, the X1 Carbon comes standard with an SSD, which certainly helps performance overall as far as boot up and application opening time. But bottom line, if you want the fastest performing laptop of these two, the T430 has the most room to grow there.